Hello world. In this video I'm going to show the start of an intermediate version of a Python voice assistant like an Amazon Alexa or a Siri using object oriented programming. So many videos on other channels just show parts and pieces using some basic functions. That's not something you can deploy to a project. So this is the start of my intermediate level voice assistant program, and I'm really looking for some professional Python feedback because I am self-taught. So this is an object-oriented voice assistant program. And if you're new to my channel, welcome to the 113th video on my channel where I'm building my own digital assistant named Shane, like Jarvis from the Iron Man movies and comics. And in the 100th video on this channel, which you can click here, I laid out how my vision of having an AI like Jarvis will look like, and a majority of the function or the capability will be a voice assistant, command-driven program. So this is the start, and so let's check it out. Now you will see words in the console, and this is how I use to test it. So here we go. See how it's listening? It's not really doing anything while I talk, and so it's going to wait for its word, which is the word I programmed. So Shane,
How can I help you?
introduce yourself.
I am Shane. I'm a digital assistant.
Shane,
How can I help you?
what is the Dow Jones?
Here is what I found.
Okay, so I opened up a what is the Dow Jones on Google, just like if Siri can't find anything. And in a previous video, I showed how to extract the very first part of the first thing. Shane,
How can I help you?
open YouTube.
Opening YouTube.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. It went right to my channel for you to subscribe if you want to. It's crazy. Thanks. Shane,
How can I help you?
take over the world.
I don't know how to do that yet.
All right, so that's my progress. Notice how Shane said he can't do that yet. So the keyword being yet. And we have this conversation log. So the conversation started today, the 5th of December. And these are the commands I gave it. Introduce yourself. What is the Dow Jones? Open YouTube and take over the world. So this will be how I test, and when my family uses it, if it can't do it yet, I'll probably say if it can't do it, this was just to show you that every command is on here. But what I'll probably do is if it says I don't know how to do that yet, then I will keep a log of that so I can program those specific functions. Because I imagine a lot of it will be just my family doing nonsense, because that's what most of us do with our voice assistant programs. So those are some minimum functions, and so what I'm looking for is some feedback on the code that I'm about to go through before I go any further and implement all the functions we've been working on together on my channel. So we've done a Bible app, we've done a lot of web scraping, things like that can be implemented here, but I just want to make sure I have a good object-oriented model before we proceed. So we're going to start off. I do have a requirements file, so if this does get deployed, it will have a requirement. So if I upload this to GitHub, that's a requirement. And so the first thing we're going to do is import speech recognition as SR. We're going to import Python's text-to-speech. This is called pyttsx3. Import web browser to open up the web pages. And then we're going to need the date time for a lot of things in the future. And so if you looked in the requirements, To do speech recognition, you need Pi Audio. I'm using, you have to get your own wheel to do that. And I'm using a 64-bit version of Windows, and I'm using Python 3.8. And so first we're going to go through some constants that we'll need throughout the program. So to use the speech recognition, you need to do a recognizer and a microphone using sr.recognizer and microphone. Then you're going to need to do the Python text-to-speech constants. So you need to start an engine. And then I set the property and the volume to 1.0. So, you can control that volume using a speaker, but I want it to just be a good solid 1 for the volume. The wake word is the name of your program. So if you were making an Alexa, that would be Alexa. Echo, Siri, mine's called Shane. Just think about this before you make your own. If you use a common word, it's going to be waking up a lot. If you use a very long word, you might time out your speech recognition. So just something to think about. Then start the text file, the conversation log. And then I put all the search words in a key value so it can search. So if I say, most of the times when you use a question word to Siri, you're asking for it to Google search for you. So who is this person? What is that? When is that? Where is that? Why is that? How is that? Etc. Now that's not always true. So we're going to have to analyze every single string, which is why people get paid so much money to work for Google and Apple to do some voice analysis. But for now, this is what we have. So now we're going to do, and what you probably haven't seen in many videos, is we're going to start our own class of Shane. So think of a class as like a dog. That's the most common metaphor when explaining object-oriented thing. You can have many dogs, but most dogs have certain attributes, right? They bark, they can talk, they can wag their tail, they can move, they can sit. So these are methods of a dog. And we can create many dogs, but they all have the same methods. So that's kind of object-oriented program. So I want Shane to have a bunch of methods. So this is the initialization phase. The microphone and the recognizer, I have to pass it for some reason here too, but I don't know if this is very efficient because I already have a constant here, but I had to initialize them here as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hear for commands. All right, and so, well, actually the first thing we're going to do is listen for commands, but anyways. So the first method I created was the hearing method. You have to pass it. So we're inside the class here. So you pass it self. I'm using PyCharm. It automatically does that for you. We're going to pass it the recognizer microphone, which we established here, and it's required for the speech recognition. And then we're going to pass it the response we get from listening. Then in a try and except loop, we're going to do with microphone as a source. We're going to print waiting for command, which you saw here. So after it's woken up, I do like to do this adjust for ambient noise. So if my son is watching a football game and he's yelling, it will be, I'm speaking directly into the microphone here, so I don't have to worry about it. And then the energy threshold of 3000, I've just seen that in so many tutorials, so I used it. Then the audio equals recognizer.listen. You're going to pass it the source, which is the microphone. And then I have a timeout for 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, you may have saw this. If I didn't say anything where it says waiting for command, it will just pass if it times out. So if I get this wait.timeout or wait timeout error, which is what you'll get here, it'll just pass. So if I don't say nothing within 5 seconds, it'll just pass. If you don't have this accept wait time, you'll get a error. Also, if it thinks you said something but can't figure it out, you'll get this unknown value error. And so if I say something and then I'm like, and I can't think of it, it'll just pass on that error too. And then I want the command equals recognizer.recognize underscore Google, and we're going to pass it this audio that we got. And then I have this function called remember command. So S, and I'll show you where this S comes from, dot remember and command. And then we're going to return the command in lowercase. So if I'm not connected to the internet or it can't reach the Google Analyzer, it'll print a network error. So it may be easier to start from the beginning of the code. So we're going to call a Shane class, right? An instance of Shane. So S equals Shane. I did S because it's going to make it super easier versus Shane dot. Then S dot start conversation log, and I'll show you that function. And then while it's true, so while it's running, the response will be s.listen, which I'll show you that, and we'll pass it the recognizer and microphone. And then once we have a response, if it says the wake word, then we're going to listen for a command using the here method that we just went through. And that's why I showed you the here method before we went down here, so you know what I'm doing here. And we have to pass it the recognizer, microphone, and response, just like we showed you in the function. And then we're going to analyze that command. So using this s dot, I can call any method that I have created up here. And we've already went through this here method. So that's what Object Orientated Program does for you, is that if this was a program that required many dogs, so D equals dog, we can have dog1 equals dog class, dog2, and then we just have to say D1 bark, D2 speak. So that's how Object Orientated Program works. So we just talked about the here method, which you saw we could just call s dot something. So s dot remember is a function which we'll go over shortly. Then we have this speak. So we passed it to self, and then any text I pass it, it'll speak. So first you say engine.say, then whatever text we pass it, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then engine.run and wait, which is how you kind of cut the speech engine, and then it'll just stop talking. So I don't think we use that yet. Nope. So that's used to speak to the user, and you'll see shortly how we use that. Then you saw that we started with the conversation log. So this is here. Oh, I'm sorry. This is here. So conversation started on this date, and it'll just keep adding to this. It won't create a new file every time. So first we get a string version of today's date. Then we pass that into today. So now it's a string. So with open, this conversation log, which we started up here, right? We're going to append to that thing as F. So F.write, the conversation started today, and then a line break. You saw that here. Conversation started on today, line break. So anytime we do this start conversation log, it'll do this code, which we only call once here. So that's why it's outside the true, the while loop, because it would keep on creating this line every time. Then we want to remember things. So anytime we have a user command, I want to remember that. So same thing with that conversation log open. We're going to pass it the command. Then we're going to f.write the user, then the command, then a line break. All right, and we'll see that in a little bit by right here, s.remember the command. So every time we have a command, user, and this is the command. So s.remember, that's what this self allows you to do, s.remember. Then we're going to find search words. And so we covered that up here, right? This is a key value pairs of all the question words, if you will. And so the very first thing we're going to do, we're going to check for this search words. So if the first word in this command, so in the command I do, so what is the Dow Jones, we're going to find the 0th, which is what, the very first word. So if it's in the searchwords.get, we're going to return true, right? And I'll show you what that looks like when we analyze each command. So down here, we're going to listen right here for Shane. If it hears Shane, we're going to get the command, and then we're going to analyze that command. That's what this is. So this will be the main source of my AI, if you will, right? The actual processing. So the very thing that we'll start with is there a search word, right? Are we asking Shane to look for something? So if define search words is in the command, then it's true, right? That's what this does. It returns true. Then we will speak, here's what I found, which you heard. Then it's going to add to this web browser .open. So google.search question mark q equals, and then when you pass it these curly braces, it's going to look for this, which is the command. So when I ask what is the Dow Jones, it adds what is the Dow Jones to this, right? What is the Dow Jones goes here. And then it just opens a web browser. So if I did not say something with a search word, so when I said open YouTube, that makes this false. So it skips this, or it doesn't skip it, it actually checks it. And then it says, if the command says open YouTube, then it will speak opening YouTube, and then it will open, and I just happen to pass my channel, just so you can subscribe to it. But we know we're going to have to expand on this. So basically, if I'll do the same thing up here, if the command starts with open, then it'll do a bunch of stuff. Will it open a web page? Will it open a folder? Once I have a robot version of Shane, will it open a Christmas package? I don't know. We'll see. If the command equals introduce yourself, as you heard, it says I am Shane. I'm a digital assistant. Everything else, it'll say, I don't know how to do that yet. So when I asked take over the world, it said, I don't know how to do that yet. Sometimes you will get a type error. So if I pass something that doesn't fit, maybe a number or something, it'll just pass. And what I need to do is speak, I didn't get that. That'd probably be a better accept clause. This is the function for listening to a command. So while it's true, and what we'll do in the future is say, if I say quit or goodbye or stop listening, this will turn to false. But so while this function is true, we're going to use the recognizer in the microphone, just like the here command, and we're just going to print listening every 5 seconds. So we're going to adjust for ambient noise. The energy threshold is 3000, so if I whisper something, it might not hear it. But if you have a current Alexa, it can recognize whispers and it will whisper back to you. So what I can do is say, if the energy threshold is below 1000, then use a whisper voice. I don't know yet. We'll see. I have a timeout of 5 seconds. I may consider reducing that. We'll see. The user won't see this. This is for me debugging and creating the program. I'll have this encapsulated in a little something that represents Shane with a microphone and a speaker built into it, and they won't see these responses. So and then we're going to assign a response, and if the response is in the wake word, so if it equals Shane, right here, then it will say, how can I help you? And then return the response, a lowercase version of that response. Else it will pass, and then it will do a white wait timeout error, which we already discussed, and then just pass right through it. If I say or something that it can't recognize, it'll pass on that. And if I'm disconnected from the Google Audio, it will say network error. But as we talked about, I may need to say, hey, I can't connect to Google to recognize your voice yet. And so what we do with this lowercase response, and that's what we discussed up here, is we're going to take that response and pass it into here. And we actually don't use it in here, so I can actually take that out. So that's it. That's a lot to cover. This is my version of an object-oriented version of a voice assistant like Alexa or Siri. This is an intermediate version, And I really hope I get some professional Python programmers to get some feedback. I'll post this on Reddit, and so maybe I can get their feedback as well. And they're really good at giving feedback, some not always constructive. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helps you make your own Alexa or Siri. And please consider subscribing to my channel because we're going to build our very own Alexa or Echo or Siri, and we're going to put it into something physical. And thanks for watching. Please like this video. Goodbye, world.